Hello, this is Brad Wild, or Brad, and today we're going to attempt a flight with the EADT x737, the donateware that was released late spring. And the reason I haven't done this sooner is I haven't been able to have a successful flight. Everything seems to go well from startup, takeoff, cruise, and even descent, but I've had issues with an approach, or the approach. But I've done a couple of them now without running it into the ground, so I thought I would try a video and we'll see how this goes. So here we are at Sky Vector, looking at a sectional. Be taking off here from Reno, and this is as the crow would fly. Of course, we're not going to fly direct. If you are familiar with the new Sky Vector, you'll remember that it's got all the maps available right on the main screen. So we're going to be departing with the Hungry 3, which kind of swings us around and brings us back to the FMG VOR, Foxtrot Mike Golf. So I want to start with that. Let's go over to our kill this. Put in FMG right now. So we'll circle around to the north and then cross. And we're going to be using the Modesto 5 star, and flip this around here. So here is Mustang and brings us down to Croce. Alright, so we'll fly along the eastern edge of Lake Tahoe and then turn westward towards our SID. Pick up our SID here. While I'm over here, this is fuelplanner.com, and I just put in Boeing 737, Reno, San Francisco. I hit the load sheet, and the number that I'm looking for, there we go, 5283. So once we climb into the airplane, so if you click the visor up here, you'll have a place to make a fuel request. So we really don't need that much fuel, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that number in, 5283, and I'll click Quick Fuel. Alright, let's get the fires lit. I'm using a checklist that I've been massaging for some time now, and I'll go ahead and post that to the YouTube video. So look for that link, and if I forget, please remind me. But I've got that over on a second screen, and I'll be using that to guide us. So battery on, and we'll guard that. And standby power, it's to be auto. Then there's a little black light here that you press, ground power available, and then toggle that. And we have enough juice here to get things rolling. We can put this on steady. Just some lights to let people know. Alright, let's get working on our FMS. If somebody could tell me how to get this thing updated. I've got the Navigraph FMS data updater app, but for some reason it's not updating this. I think we're up to 1609 everywhere else. So we're flying out of Reno. By the way, when you click that L2 button, it takes a second before you see any sort of response. And flying into KSFO. Click. Again, the momentary pause, and we'll call this American Airlines 111 just for expedience sake. And we'll activate that. Let's go over to our departure. We're going to be taking off from 34 left. And we'll be using the Hungary SID transitioning at FMG. And we'll go ahead and execute. Then let's put in our arrival and departure, because there really aren't going to be any waypoints in between. In other words, our SID and star should take care of it, but we'll double check. All right, approach is 28 right. And I'm going to go ahead and use Archie here, and then, whoops, zip pass Modesto. Transition is FMG. We'll go ahead and execute that. And if we look at our legs, FMG Tros, I only have one discontinuity, and I'll take care of that by clicking Archie and then filling in the open rectangles. And of course, the other thing we should do is take a look at our plan and step through it. So you can see the little circular route we'll make to the north. And finally, Tros, and then the star into San Francisco. So all of that looks pretty good. Put this back on map. We should be fueled up. Just double check here. So we're good. So I can click our master caution. Let's get back to our FMS. So you click the L1 button, it fills in a couple of numbers here, and I'm just going to put in 01 for reserves. If you try to put in just a 1 without the 0, it will bark at you. And I'm going to use the medium cost index of 45. Our cruise altitude will be, well, let's say flight level 300. I mean, it's a pretty short flight. Hate to spend all my time climbing. Transition altitude is flight level 180. Click our N1 limit, and I put in 45 degrees here. I haven't seen it make much of a difference, and I leave these values the same. Go to takeoff. Standard issue would be 05 flaps. Note the trim, 4.75. You'll see how that works in a minute. And that is it for the FMC. And then if you come down here, that was 475. Now I've got a button that is on my joystick that is mapped In the Airbus A320 by JAR, it does it for you. So a little manual intervention here. So that takes care of our FMC, or FMS, whatever you want to call it. And now we can get the engines lit. Alright, I'm referring to my checklist on my second screen, and we'll just start here on our overhead panel. So cabin utility and the IFE switches are on. Then we can turn on our fuel pump. Left forward is all that you need to start our APU. Here's the APU switch. Flip it to start for a second, and then I'm going to be watching the temperature here as it comes up. Get a little more volume here. You can hear it rumbling now. And I'm going to wait for this to light up, and I'm going to go ahead and turn on our APU generator. Then there's an APU bleed I want to turn on. Yaw damper on. Our emergency lights armed. We can get our seat belt and smoking signs illuminated. Window heat on. Not sure what those do, but and we can adjust our cabin temps. It doesn't seem to really matter. So now that everything is operating off of the APU, we can turn off our ground power. So that is off, and we're relying on our APU now. And our recirculating fans go to auto, and our packs we want on auto. Isolation valve open, and then we've got our bleeds. They are by default, they're on. These are engine bleeds. We'll need those to spool up the engines for start. And then we can set our pressurization here. So flight level 300, and landing altitude is basically 0. Now down across our panel here, we'll set this to reject takeoff for our brakes. You can do things like test the lights. And we'll set our altimeter here. I'm just going to leave it at 2992. I know that drives some people crazy that I don't pay a lot of attention to that, but I'm more interested in getting a decent takeoff and landing on this airplane. Excuses, I know. Alright, transponder, that is to standby. Again, I'm referring to my list over on the other screen. And our auto thrust is armed. Flight director is on. I'll set this to our V speed plus 20. Initial heading, not that I'm going to use this, but I'll just go ahead and set it to 34. And our initial altitude, let me just see what if Hungry 3 gives us any instructions. It just has us climbing to 10,000. So that's our initial altitude. I mean, if you realize that Tahoe is already at 4,000 feet elevation. So we'll set that for 10,000. So we've got everything set, and now we can call for a pushback and get the engine started. I'm going to be using the Tugmaster, which is the tow that you can purchase on xplane.org store. So I'll pull that up. I'm still getting used to it, so forgive me if I'm a little tentative with this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and call it. And then click lock. You'll see some activity here. Release my parking brake. And let's see if I can get this thing. Whoops, wrong way. Whoops, wrong way again. Go this way. Now I've got this guy really confused. I apologize for this, people. I've got to learn these controls. Like I said, I'm still getting used to this thing. So I have to remember 9 o'clock and 6 o'clock. Alrighty, we'll stop now and we'll say goodbye to this guy. Thought I stopped. There we go. Gotta unlock now. There we go. Now we can send him packing, I believe. There we go. So, a little cockamamie here. And we'll close that. So, not a very auspicious start. But now we can get things fired up. So we'll start with our fuel pumps, everything on. These two electrical switches go on. Put on our anti-collision lights. We've pushed back. And now we can begin start. So push and turn to ground. And I'm watching this here. And when it gets to 3, I'm going to flip up our fuel, and you can see temperature rise. This will snap back into the off position, but I can go ahead and start the second engine. Always a reassuring sound. Let's add fuel. Now there's some debate about turning the packs on or off. I've left them on auto. So when this switches back, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my generators, and which turns these off. And I can go ahead and kill my APU. Let me just make sure that I'm following my isolation valve. Can go to auto. There you go. And we'll go ahead and turn off our APU, starting with the bleed. And this should come down in a second. Make sure these are turned off. Usually you hear it kind of spool down. There it goes. So we can set our flaps to 5. Put on some taxi lights here. And we'll call ground control and get instructions for taxi. Alright, here we are at the end of the runway. Just a few things to take care of before we go. Get my sound back up. It's so loud when I'm outside, but it's nice to hear what's going on inside. So we definitely want to get some lights on. We don't need the taxi light on anymore. We can go ahead and turn on our strobes. Don't need the logo light on just yet. And we can arm our, looks like it is armed, our speed brake, and put our transponder to TA/RA. By the way, you can move your displays around. And you can also set your bugs here. I just got it on auto. So we'll see it. Just double check everything here. Again, I'm looking at my checklist. And we will put our packs on, make sure they're on auto. Yep. And we can go ahead and put on our timer. Not sure, let's see, there we go. All right, we've been cleared for takeoff. One thing I forgot to do, it's on the checklist, and that's arm our LNAV. It doesn't have to be done, it can be done at any time, but it is on the checklist. And at about 40%, I will click toga. Finger on the G key for the gear.
V1A.
Rotate.
V2.
Gear up. And at 400 feet I can go ahead and click my autopilot and VNAV, which will power back. Put my landing gear in the off position. A little noisy. Reno in the background. And you can see what lies ahead here. Quite the circuitous route, which probably adds about 10 minutes to our flight time. So flaps up. Could have been done sooner. Just I'm using the very latest SkyMax. I think it's 3.3, and I think it looks pretty good. So we are at 10,000 feet, and we can go ahead and dial it up to 320. I'm sorry, 300. That was our... And we can turn off our landing lights. Yeah, I think the SkyMax clouds look pretty good. Let me just show you what my settings are on those. I've got cloud area at just under 30,000, but everything else I believe is just the default. I have turned off lens flare effects, so I think we're good. You know, I have frame rates at 23 and 22, which is, when I get down into the, when I hit 20, I get a little nervous. Somebody asked about what my rendering settings were. I have this set to very high, but I've heard it could be, you can drop it to high and not get a lot of change. In other words, it's still quite acceptable. I have shadows pretty much off. I would like to have 3D on aircraft, that's nice, but it does eat up some frame rate. But I save all my frame rates for HDR, although I have a very low setting. But I don't see a lot of difference between that and the high settings, at least enough to aggravate me. I've got all this stuff turned off. And number of trees, sparse, objects, a lot, tons of roads, and cars to Siberia winter. So we're making our circular route here, eventually heading back to our VOR. Everything looks good here. Now you can have your pitot light on, or your heat on if you want. Go ahead and turn that on. And these are conditional waypoints that are set by the box, as they say. And we're coming up on our transition. We'll see it flash and we'll click our standard baro here. So it turned orange actually. Flashes in the A320, so we're set to standard here. More clouds. Now I suppose I could clear some of these waypoints and go direct. But I won't. We are at flight level 300 and we're cruising along, ground speed of 433. Still trying to figure out what the throttles are doing here. Still have my VNAV and LNAV set, and auto throttle. So this is apparently our economy. If I wanted to ramp it up, I could do so. I believe here, if I were to change that number, things would speed up. But I don't want to mess with things right now. Let's just leave it. Nice leisurely flight. And we're on our way to Tros, which is a long shot here. No waypoints along the way. Well, we are coming up on Tros, which is where we really begin our star, Modesto 5, into San Francisco. And right here we've got our top of descent. Now if you're used to the JAR A320, it would actually say T/D, but we can spot it here on our MCDU. So a couple things that I want to be prepared for, since we're going to be on top of it pretty soon, is I want to get the proper altitude dialed in. So looking at my approach chart for 28 right, here is the Modesto. I'm interested here in Sepin. That's really where we're going to probably be picking up our guide slope and localizer, although they're showing one here at Axmill as well. But I'm going to go ahead and dial in 3,000 feet into my altitude so that when the aircraft automatically begins, which is a little bit different than the A320 where you have to actually click on your altitude button, the 737 does it for you automatically. You just have to make sure you've got your altitude set. And of course, VNAV. Now the thing I've learned in this aircraft is if you want to have any chance of capturing that guide slope, you need to be below it. If you're over it at all or go chasing it, you'll never make it. And it can get really ugly. So it's cleared up. The Sierra Nevada behind us. Yosemite back there somewhere. And I doubt there's a lot of lakes right now in California. Sorry to keep messing with the volume here, but I don't want to drown myself out. Try a different range here. Now this aircraft also turns quite a ways before the actual waypoint. It makes up the difference on the other side, but at first it's a little disconcerting. One thing I want to double check. I thought I said it. So here we begin our turn. Our frequency for the ILS localizer 111.7, and that's what I've got dialed in here. And if I check, let's see, nav status, it's plugged into the radio here. So top descent is next. In 6 miles, and we'll just monitor the aircraft to make sure it begins its descent. And there it goes. You can see our descent is approaching about 2,300 feet per minute. Throttles have come back. And again, this is all through the magic of the LNAV. So we'll monitor our descent. As we go. So back with you in a few minutes. So coming up on flight level 180, and which is our transitional altitude, and we'll want to switch over to our baro. Let's assume that I've listened to ATIS or air traffic control has told me what the baro is. And that's just here. By the way, this center switch here gives you a few options on your navigational display. This shows us our descent, our set altitude, and our progress along the way. And you can turn the circles on and off as well. So at grown we are to be at, let's see, what is it telling us? Well, seeds it's to be at 11.7. So we've got, we're going to have a pretty radical descent here after seeds. I'm a little nervous about that. We'll see how the aircraft does. Well, let's get everybody seated. And it's getting a little dark in here. Crank up the lights. Now, while we're descending here, I'd like to put in some different speeds here. I'd like to slow down, so maybe by Archie I can set this to 220. Whoops. 220, and then you have to put in the altitude as well. So 0.79. Whoops. Having problems here. So we're, and at Seppen, I want to be at probably 160. So maybe meta we could make that 200. And then at Seppen, let's make it 160. Let's really slow down here. Of course, air traffic control would be telling us what speeds they want us at. And then we'll use the speed bug from there on out. So we may be asked for some drag, but coming up on the bay, South Bay, this is probably San Jose, KSJC, and an airport that I've flown in and out of and have videos on my channel to prove it. So let's see if we can get down to 7,000 feet. We can go ahead and turn on our landing lights. Get the logo light on, make the marketing people happy. Lower our range. Alright, I think we're doing okay here in terms of altitude. So as I make this turn, I'm going to start looking for the localizer and guide slope bugs. And when they are close to being where they should be, I'm going to click the APP button. And once it's captured, I'll get an indication in yellow here that I should probably turn on my second autopilot. Yes, that is San Jose. Actually flying there a lot in real life. My son lives within a stone's throw of the airport. In fact, we'll do really geeky stuff and go over there and do plane spotting. We have Oakland off in the distance. You can see, I don't know what runway that is, but okay, in Archie we needed to be at 7,000. Whoops, it's already slipped by us. At Meta we want to be at 5,800. Go ahead and set our auto brake for 2. Well, I wanted to be at 200. So let's see if we slow down. Visibility is down to about 10 miles. So we're about ready to turn towards the airport. And you can see our localizer bug over here. Well, I'm not getting the decrease in speed that I'd hoped to get. So this is, again, one of the issues with this aircraft. It's just completely unpredictable. And for some reason I can't get the speed bug working. Might be because I've got auto throttle on. Try a notch of flaps. See if that'll slow us down. Yeah, yesterday I flew basically the same route and the speed dropped nicely. So we have our localizer here. So this is now magenta. Here's our guide slope as it slides down. We're underneath it, which is where you want to be. Well, we're probably a little fast for that notch of flaps, but we have some slowing down to do. We are still 12 miles out. Now there's our speed bug. And we can go ahead and click our second autopilot. So guide slope and localizer have been captured. And we can go ahead and slow our aircraft down. 140. Gear down. I thought I had more flaps down. Maybe I went the wrong direction. Anyway, our PAPI lights are looking good. We've got 2 red, 2 white. Watch our speed here. Good, throttles are coming up. Another notch of flaps. Go ahead and turn our taxi lights and turn off lights on. So far, everything's looking really good here. Everything's lined up nicely. Landing on 28 right or left is a little bit like landing on an aircraft carrier. And final notch of flaps. So I have a button mapped to my joystick for reverse. And we'll kill the autopilot.
50, 30, 20, 10.
Reverse thrust. we get down to about 70.
This is going to take the captain just give me a moment to track you to the gate, so we ask that you remain seated with your seatbelt securely fastened until the seatbelt sign has been turned off and the aircraft has come to a complete stop at the gate. That will be your only indication that it's safe to get up and move about the cabin. We also ask that you keep the aisle clear of any carry-on baggage. This is the termination of our flight this morning, so we ask that you check your back pockets, closets, and overhead bins for the
Well, it's not morning.
Extra care should be taken when opening the overhead bins if the articles may have shifted during our flight. On behalf of your entire flight crew, it's been our pleasure serving you this morning. Have a pleasant day.
And we'll wait here for ATC to clear us to the ramp. But any of you who follow my flights know that I rarely get to the ramp. But we'll clean up the airplane. Put the flaps up. And we can turn off some of the lights here. And don't need the strobe anymore. So I'll just conclude the flight here. I'm glad we made it. Thanks for watching.